We're live. Hey, everybody. How's it going? Welcome to our stream that we're going to be having a nice laid-back chill stream, as they say on Spotify. We're just going to wait 5 minutes for people to show up, have some idle chit-chat. Clay, how are you?
I'm good.
We're talking about how we twinned up today. We're both wearing our new purple shirts.
Yeah, well, maroon deep red wine is the color of the day, I guess. I clicked over to the comments section, and the first thing I saw was who would win in a fight, Clay or Wes. So I guess that's where we are in our.
Do you want to start with that one? Have you ever been in a fight?
No, not really. I have the benefit of being 6'3" and fairly intimidating to look at. So if I've had multiple, or at least one friend of mine say, if I didn't know you and I saw you walking down the street, I'd probably cross the street. So I feel like that's done me a lot of good, keeping me out of fistfights in my life.
Yeah, I haven't gotten in a fight since elementary school. Hello, everybody. Hello, David Ross. Hello, Matt Ross. Hello, Yum Yum Podcast. Hello, Cardinal Doomsday. Brandon.
I think it would be one of those Rocky 3 situations where, you know, you get to see the lead up. Yeah. Okay. But then, like, right before we punch, it turns into a Leroy Neiman painting, and leave it up to the imagination of the viewer.
We're just going to hang out for a couple of minutes till people show up. The general way this is going to work for people is that we'll wait a couple of minutes, and then we'll treat the opening here like an actual podcast. So me and Clay will take a 5 seconds of silence and then go into it. And we'll ignore the audience for the Enterprise section of this, which is going to be short, maybe 15, 20 minutes, because I want to treat it like a podcast for people. And I know it'll be annoying to listen to people on the podcast version if it's us talking to the chats for that 20 minutes. After that, it'll be Q&A. We'll open things up and all that stuff. So we're just hanging out. Let us know how the audio. Wes, you are way lower volume than Clay. Thank you, Craig. Let me know if this is better.
Tables have turned.
I turned the gain up. Is that better? Clay, you say something.
I am happy to be here. You sound better on my end. You did get louder when you did that, so
that's because I got angry. Started yelling. They can only stay for an hour or so. This will only probably maybe it'll go a little bit longer than an hour. My audio is pretty even. If anything, Clay is louder. I fixed that. Hopefully. What's new with you? Anything today? Did you watch Meghan and Harry?
I didn't. No, I was watching AEW Revolution last night, so I was completely. I knew that the interview was happening, but I went into Twitter afterwards, and all I saw were memes, and I couldn't parse out what they were about. So.
We miss Trump so badly that we're like, send over the British to give us something to talk about. What a. It's one of those It's one of those things, like, I find both sides equally ridiculous. Like, I find the royals ridiculous. I find Meghan and Harry to be ridiculous people who are, like, fraudulent people on some level. Like, they're like, oh, listen to our podcast about the troubles and bigotry that we've gone through. It's like, fuck you all. Like, what are we talking about? Like, at what level does privilege become a joke where the royals of a European nation are like, we have problems? It's like, you have no problems, guys. I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, I don't it's strange. I find that whole thing very odd. I try not to get into it, but as you said, it's all Twitter was talking about for the entire night, so it's hard not to.
Yeah, the only thing that I saw was people laughing at the fact that some of the more independent-minded Americans, let's put it that way, ended up like defending the royal family, which is like, so you're flying a "Don't Tread on Me" flag, but you're also like, you got to say nice things about the royals, guy.
Yeah, it's trends towards authoritarian, I suppose. Yeah, although the older I get, the more I respect the old school British stiff upper lip, which is what this is not. This is like the antithesis of it, and I respect when Harry and Meghan are in their interview saying that, like, they just told us, like, listen, we're sorry you have mental health issues. Like, we all have mental health issues, and we all got through it. And they were like, that was a terrible thing. Oprah's like, that was a terrible thing for you to say. I was like, well, I kind of respect that. I kind of respect, just shut the fuck up and go about your business and see what happens. Like, none of us are real. None of us have real lives or anything. And the Crown will get a decent season out of it, I suppose.
I'm honestly surprised it's taken this long. Like, I feel like you could there's plenty to mine there to be like the first person to spill the dirt on the British family in the modern era. And the fact that it's one of Diana's sons is only that much juicier because it's probably how she would have wanted it.
Yeah. That would be my thing to Megan. It's like, what did you think you were marrying into? Do you know who his mother is? What are you talking about? Like, what is this? Anyway, we're done talking about the Royals. Anything else? We've been on for 4 minutes. I'll give it another minute, and then we can get into it. Anything new happen to you today?
No, but the other thing all over Twitter, from my angle, was the ending of AEW Revolution was a exploding barbed wire death match, which, as you do, which failed to live up. It was set up that there was a 30-minute countdown, and if the match didn't end in 30 minutes, the entire ring would explode. And the match did end, but they kept the countdown going, and they set up this really melodramatic thing where one guy had to come in and cover the other guy so he didn't get blown up. And then the timer went off, and
was there a small person crawling underneath waiting for the wildfire to explode or something like that?
Well, maybe, but what happened when the timer went off was anticlimactic, to say the least. It was basically like a couple sparklers and a smoke bomb. And it was very clear that it did not go the way it was intended to go.
Yeah, that's too bad.
The two guys in the middle of the ring are supposed to be selling it like they just survived Pearl Harbor. And it's like, you would have seen a bigger explosion at a Founders Day celebration at the town you grew up in.
Nick the Rat, hello. Neurolemal, hello. Cardinal, you've been there. Royo, hello. Jason.
I'm always astounded at how many of these names I don't take the time to read correctly, and always just assume there's something else. Like, until you said that, I always assumed it was neuroliminal, which isn't a word. I just assumed that's what it was.
Neuroliminal, I think. Mercer, welcome. Troy White, hello.
It's just the era of screen names and avatars and online personalities that, like, I just assume whatever nonsense my eyes perceive is probably correct because...
Yeah. How about Rexstar Ororar? He's been here forever,
proving my point.
I know the name, but I know it visually. It's the language thing about the hieroglyphics of his name.
What I'm saying is I don't respect any of you enough to actually learn your names, much like my children.
Russ Graham, welcome. Melon, I know Melon. Good evening to you. Empire Jeff. Hi, everybody. All right, so I guess we're good to go. We're here to talk, unless you guys want to hear idle chatter for another half an hour. I'm on vacation, so I'm drinking.
Ooh,
this is like the crazy time for me. So things are gonna get lit. I don't have anything else really to say. It's gonna get warm here. It's been beautiful.
I don't want us to turn into one of those shows that talks about nonsense for 45 minutes.
No, I guess I should just for everyone who's joined late here. We're just killing time for another minute, and then we're gonna do a. Treat this like an official podcast, just so that when I chop the audio out of this and put it on the podcast feed, people aren't annoyed by the first 5 minutes of this. So we're going to spend 20 minutes talking about Enterprise Season 2 just by ourselves as if there was no chat. But you guys will have all the opportunity in the Q&A section after that 20 minutes to tell us whatever you want to talk about. And we'll treat it at that point more like it's a live stream. So if that sounds good, I'll have a drink for you, Cardinal. Salvis, hello. Anyone else new? No,
David Ross asked us if there's a space on the website where he can buy our beard hair.
Yeah, it started with buying a gram, and I was like, oh man, this is just beard hair. No,
I mean, how much are you willing to pay for it? I guess is the next question. Because
are you paying for shipping, or is that coming out of my pocket? That's it. All right, so I'm ready for this. If you are, Clay.
Sure.
All right. So let's go into. I'm going to open up this window. People can look at our ratings. Boom. There they are. All right. So 5 seconds of silence. And then me and Clay are going to get into breaking down Enterprise's second season. Hey everybody. Welcome to the podcast. We're going to be talking about Star Trek Enterprise's second season. We made it to the end, Clay.
Yes. I look forward to you reminding me what happened.
217 days, according to listener Kyle, who counted, or at least went back and did the quick math on a calculator. Took by far the longest of any season. We had Discovery Season 3 to pair this with. We had Lower Decks, which all feels like pre-COVID stuff, but it's been going.
Did this also overlap with Picard?
It might have overlapped with Picard. Yeah.
Wow. Jesus.
Well, no, because I think they didn't because I think we started Enterprise season 2 in the middle of 2020 in June or something.
Okay,
I think
sure.
Picard was early. But anyway, had a lot of overlap. Took a long time to get through it.
You had a baby
I had a baby.
in the time it took.
Was it
us to
conceived?
do
Yeah,
this.
was it conceived? It was might have been conceived and born in the time that it took to finish a Star Trek season. So yeah, we're going to just be doing our usual wrap-up thing here. Clay, me and you have been talking. Neither of us particularly remember the season all that well, although I'll ask you, is that a product of the season or a product of the times that we live in?
I think it's a product of my own,
Indifference.
retention. No, it's. I'll be honest with you. I used to. I mean, I've probably said this before, but I used to have like a steel trap of useless memory of everything I've ever watched and could. I could access it on an encyclopedic level. But I think then I just watched more stuff and it just doesn't stick the way that it used to. I also think I kind of ruined my retention for this stuff when we were doing Jim, who's been on a couple of the Star Wars shows with us. He and I used to do a 24-hour movie marathon, which then turned into just a regular like week-long movie marathon after the 24 hours almost killed us the second time we did it. And we watched so much stuff. We did it for 6 years on the triple numbered date from 2000 June 6, 2006 to December 12th, 2012. And just the sheer number of stuff that we watched, I remember like a third of it.
Yeah.
And ever since then, I feel like I have not had the retention for that stuff that I used to have.
When you're younger, there's nothing more important to take up that space.
Sure.
Now
yeah,
it's like you got
yeah.
bills. It's like the bill is going to knock out Quicksilver's powers out of my head. Like it's just that can't occupy the same space.
It's funny. It's certain things you don't realize until you obviously get older with this stuff. Where like I'd be talking about a movie and I'd ask my dad, "Did you ever see this movie?" And my dad would be like, "I think so." And I'd be like, "What do you mean you think so?"
Yeah.
I remember literally everything I've ever watched. And at the time I'm like 13 and have watched like 2 years worth of stuff, not
Right.
40 years worth of stuff or 35 years worth of stuff at this point.
Yep.
So yeah, some of it sticks, some of it doesn't. I get anytime, usually a couple refreshers and I'm right back in there with Enterprise, but we'll see. Maybe it's a mark of the quality.
We'll see how this goes. I think
we should, instead of rating at this point, we should go through and how many hints does it take Clay to remember what episode it was?
I was considering that. I was actually thinking, and I was like, well, I don't want to. At a certain point, I'm sure the joke would run old, and maybe it just functions as a better idea or anything. But honestly, when I was going through this, I had to Wikipedia some of the episodes. It's like, what? Which one is this? What the hell is going on here? It doesn't help that Enterprise has probably the least exciting episode titles out of all the shows too. It's a lot of like we're looking early, but it's like Anomaly, Extinction, The Seventh, Minefield.
Is the seventh episode?
It is the seventh episode.
Okay,
We're gonna have more to say. You actually repeated that joke from the episode itself
Yeah.
because I listened to.
well, what people like is they like to hear the hits.
It's not even a joke. We are just Neil Peart was like, I composed these drum parts. I'm going to play them exactly the same because that's what people want to do, and it's an interesting mindset.
It reminds
makes sense to me.
It reminds me of this one time that I went down to Jamaica and I ordered this.
Macaroni and cheese. Just change the food up every single
Yeah.
time. So let's talk about Enterprise. Second season. I put a poll up on YouTube. 100 and some odd people responded to it, saying that 65% or something last I checked was that season 2 was better than season 1. Does that ring true to you?
I could try and give you a bullshit answer, but I honestly don't remember. If I'm looking at these,
I don't think season 1 to me is more of an Enterprise show.
mm-hmm.
And I think that the general problem with season 2 is that it kind of felt like it moved away from its premise quite a bit, and it just became generic Star Trek episode season.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't have the charm of breaking the ice in the first season, or Fortunate Son, or even like the Andorian and Vulcan stuff. Like it kind of abandons all that and moves into episodes like Marauders, Night in Sick Bay, Dead Stop, which are all varying in quality and everything. But just looking at the chart here, obviously you can see that it went through a tremendous terrible section in the middle of it, where we went from Night in Sick Bay all the way down to Precious Cargo. Is a pretty rough stretch of red right there. We talked about how Night in Sick Bay to the 7th was maybe the worst stretch of Star Trek we'd seen since doing this, because it's the first time there have been 3 consecutive ones in any series, which is pretty impressive, all things considered. It kind of recovered towards the end. I walk away from this season, and I know it's been a long time trying to remember it, but especially since we've already recorded a couple season 3 episodes, seasons 1 and 2 of the show just have no direction to them, is the real big problem. There's like no backstory that you want to sink your teeth into. They try with the Vulcans and the Andorians. They try with the Temporal Cold War. None of that stuff is interesting or good. And so after a certain point, it just became really C- to D+ Star Trek episodes over and over and over and over and over again. And even towards the end here, like I'm not telling anybody about even Cogenitor, I don't think. Like Cogenitor isn't making my top 10 Star Trek list. You know, it's a good episode, but it's not on there. You can take it anywhere from that. So that's my general takeaway of the season, is that I'm in a year from now, these 2 seasons of Enterprise are going to be my least memorable seasons of Star Trek that we've covered so far, I think.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You know, it's funny to look at these numbers. Season 2 has 3 1s in a row and then a 2. Like that big chunk is mostly 1s and 2s, but it's actually more. It's weird because the first season seems to is more consistently
subpar.
Subpar. Whereas season 2 is a little bit more all over the place for us. You get, like, we only had 1 5 in season. Only I had a 5. Well, I guess you've yet to do a 5.
I've never given a 5 to an Enterprise. Yeah.
But we didn't know. Neither of us had a 1 in season 1, and most of our ratings kind of match up. It's either like a 2 or a 3.
Yep.
And it kind of puts to the test the idea that is a show that is more consistent better. Is a show that's more subpar but more consistent better than a show that fluctuates all over the place. And I don't know. I don't think it is, because if you're going through a section like in season 1 where we've got, at least on my end, 9 2s, a 3, and a 5. Like that 5 is going to stand out a lot more because it's surrounded by mostly 2s and a 3.
Yep.
You know? So yeah, it seems like at least in season 1, the high points were like kind of an oasis.
They were, yeah. There's not many of them, as you say.
I mean, I'm sorry, I was just gonna say season 1. It's mostly 2s after the high point, which is Dear Doctor. It's mostly 2s, and then we end on a 4. And I don't know if that 4 is a legit 4 or if it's just
we have to go back and recalibrate ourselves. I would agree that season 2 is definitely up and down much more. I think in general, I would prefer a show to be up and down more than just a consistent 3 the whole way through. Certainly for the podcast, I think that it's a better outcome to be highs and lows. I think that I don't think that Enterprise's highs are that high. I think it has tremendously low lows is the problem.
Yeah.
So I just walk away from this thinking it was 2 seasons of Star Trek that didn't really stick with me. And I think in general, I just prefer the first season because maybe it was more novel when we were watching it because it was a new season off of DS9. Maybe the show actually did a better job of exploring what it means to be an Enterprise show, and the second season didn't do that, and maybe that's why I consider it more memorable. But I have a fondness for episodes like Breaking the Ice, which isn't even very good. But I just remember them like chasing the comet and walking on it and being like impressed by that and being like, oh, that's kind of a neat Enterprise take on things. Season 2 doesn't really have a lot of that. And the best examples like Cogenitor, they make a good episode that's also a good Star Trek Enterprise episode at the same time, and it achieves off of that level. But I don't know. It's hard. And when I was making the highs and lows of this season, I remember the highs. I'll be interested if you're the same. I don't remember the lows whatsoever, which to me fits into our thing of the worst Star Trek episode you could have is forgettable in some ways. Like everyone piles on Prophet and Lace, which is the cross-dressing Ferengi episode from DS9.
Sure.
I remember Prophet and Lace though. I remember be like, oh yeah, they had cross-dress for that episode. That was not a good idea, but I remember it. Do you remember what the 7th was? Do you remember what happened in that episode?
It was the one after the 6th.
I said in the opening, it's the worst episode of Enterprise we've seen, and it's a top 10 contender for all-time worst Star Trek episodes. And you agreed at the time. And now neither of us remember what happened in that episode. Looking
at those 3 ones, I remember Marauders only specifically because it's the Western.
Yep. Magnificent Seven ripoff.
Yeah, I don't remember Night in Sickbay. I very, very vaguely. Is that like, does everybody get weird or something?
Night in Sickbay is, Phlox is in the, someone gets sick, right? And then it's the dog gets sick, and Phlox is taking care of him, and Archer has to keep coming in looking for him and things like that. And Phlox is chasing butterflies and stuff like that. So
sure. Yes.
Yeah.
The 7th, gun to my head, could not tell you what that episode was.
The 7th is the Bruce Davison episode where T'Pol hunts down an ex-Vulcan guy.
Oh, yeah.
And she shoots him in the back at the very end. Archer says, shoot this guy.
Right.
We both said it was the top 10 worst episodes of Star Trek we've ever seen. It was. I re-listened to the podcast, and we were incredibly annoyed by that episode, but now I just don't remember.
Well, to be fair, and maybe this is just me, I was going back and looking at the high points, and I was like, well, I remember Cogenitor. Regeneration, I assume, is the Borg episode.
Yes.
Judgment, is that the one where he has to stand trial with the Klingons?
Yep.
Okay. Stigma. Remind me what that one is.
It's about a disease. It's a metaphor for a disease. The Vulcan AIDS episode.
Oh, right. Vulcan AIDS.
And then Dead Stop is our next Universal 4. Do you remember that one? You might not remember it by the title, but you remember the episode, I'm sure, because you've mentioned it as a favorite. It's the one with the sentient station that repairs the ship.
Oh, sure. Yes. Yeah, that was a good one. I like that one.
Yeah. And our biggest difference is Carbon Creek, which I liked, and you didn't like at all. So what's that to say about anything?
Yeah, well.
Let's get into the best and worst of the episodes, and then we'll do updated power rankings for the characters.
If anything, it really goes to show the value of the Friends episode naming system, which just gives you the lead in really easily by saying
smart.
one where X. That's when I was going through my Simpsons rewatch years ago. I was listening to the commentaries on the DVDs, and they were the writers were talking about how early on in the show, the episodes didn't have official titles. It wasn't until much later that they started giving them titles.
Yep.
So that a lot of the early ones are named like Lisa Gets a Pony, because it was just whatever was written on the note card that was the genesis of the title.
Yep.
So you end up getting pretty generic stuff, but it tells you what it's about pretty clearly. So
yeah, Seinfeld's is good too. Jerry was a stickler. He liked he wanted every episode to be the something. So it's like the pen, the contest, the whatever. But they do a pretty good job of being descriptive, and you remember for how generic they are, like the contest, you remember what the Seinfeld episode is about that and the Hamptons and stuff.
I guess it depends on what you're looking for out of a title, because I don't know if the pretension that comes along with a lot of traditional Star Trek titles really makes it any more memorable.
Mm-hmm. I just think they're cool to read.
Sure.
Yeah.
Is it Deep Space Nine that has the one that's like a bunch of Latin?
Yeah,
Sigma,
they have
Sigma,
Inter Arma,
There
Enim, Silent Legus.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you what that's about, but
it's a great episode. We should go back and rewatch that.
Yeah, listen to our coverage on it and tell me what I think.
TOS has the famous one for "The World Is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky," which is cool but meaningless.
Wasn't that an emo band from the mid-2000s?
That's my favorite Chemical Romance song of all time. Yeah, we both gave this season a 2.73 out of 5 for a season average, which is slightly higher than
amazing.
season 1. We took different paths to get there, but we both arrived at the same spot. It's slightly better than season 1, obviously. I'll look it up in a little bit. I do the season rankings, and I'll tweet them out as well, but it's middling, low middling is where this one ended up. So let's go to, what's first? Is first best? Best. Number 1, let's go janitor. I do this is just our basic math. That's all I arrived at. If I had to fiddle them, I fiddled with it a little bit. But it's co-janitor because it's the only one that you gave a 5 and I give a 4. It's our best of the season. Do you disagree with that?
No.
Co-janitor is probably the best Enterprise episode so far, right?
Yeah.
I think so.
I think what's interesting is the two high points, co-janitor and Dear Doctor, are kind of in the same ballpark as far as the stuff that they're tackling.
Yeah.
And what it does is it takes the best thing about Star Trek, really, which is you strip away the spaceships and the lasers and stuff. What you get down to is interesting science fiction concepts that lead to a moral dilemma, basically.
Yeah.
And that's what both of these episodes are. And I think that's why Enterprise overall feels so middling, is because there's so much potential to reinvent that idea with the time frame that it takes place in and the different characters that are possible, but they really just try to they're just hitting to bunt or hitting to get on base here. They're not trying to maximize their whip.
No,
I don't know,
there's no power.
Baseball. Yeah.
No power here. It's just making contact, try to get on base.
Yeah,
I'd agree. It's
so when they do something like this, which those two episodes both feel like classic Star Trek episodes, it really stands out.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's the best case of being an Enterprise episode and a decent episode of Star Trek at the same time. It's rare that it happens. I think they executed it pretty well as Enterprise can do anything. And I don't know if there's really much else to say about that. It's far and away my favorite episode, or the best one that I think of the season. Mm-hmm. Moving on to number 2. I should have gone the other way, but we'll go this way just because it's the way that the spreadsheet comes out. Judgment is my number 2, the Klingon episode.
Mm.
This is where things start getting strange, because it's like, that was okay. Is that number 2? It's a draft with LeBron at the top, and then you're like, all right, I don't know what's left. Any of the next 5 are fine.
Hey,
but
man,
I'll go with Judgment.
Tom Brady was picked 6th.
That's right.
That's
we got a lot of seasons to get through.
Part of his Paul Bunyan-esque origin story.
Judgment. Do you remember Judgment? Are you going to walk away thinking Judgment was a good episode of Enterprise this season?
I'm outside of the trial thing. Could you just give me a quick refresher on that one?
Judgment is he gets caught, goes on trial, and they bring him to Rura Penthe, where he is in the mines.
He escapes, right?
Yeah, and he escapes. Okay. But he meets J.G. Hertzler as the Klingon counselor.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I remember that one being pretty good, but clearly it didn't make that much of an impression.
Yeah.
I wonder if an Enterprise 4 is like, if
TNG 3.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like this is going to be really dismissive sounding, but sometimes it feels like a child who manages to color inside the lines really well. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, yeah, I wasn't expecting that. That's a nice color combination, and it's all kind of like looks like a picture. Well done. Yep. Yeah, it's I don't know if I would say that it feels like a steep drop from the first one.
Let's go down to the second one, which is Dead Stop. I might have gotten these backwards based on our response. I think I might remember Dead Stop more than Judgment.
I agree. Point. I definitely do. Yes.
Would you be okay with bumping Dead Stop to number 2 at this point? If you were to bump, would you switch the places of these two?
Based purely on my recollection, yes.
I think I would too, and I think our recollection matters a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I like Dead Stop. I thought that's a cool Enterprise being creepy concept.
Sure. Yeah.
And the station is sucking dry the crew members' brains in order to be this super repair station. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of creepy and neat and kind of a weird thing that you'd run into.
Yeah, good sci-fi story.
It's a good sci-fi story. Judgment is good. Judgment's probably a case of better execution, but the story not being the story is very undiscovered country. Really,
I was just gonna say it's Star Trek 6 basically.
yeah. Maybe I'll switch them. So we'll do that in real
I
time.
do remember there being some interesting moral stuff with between Archer and his defense attorney.
Yep.
But yeah, outside of that, it's not really doing much from my memory.
Decent monologues.
Yeah.
Number 4, I have Regeneration, the Borg episode. It feels okay for me
Yeah,
right
it's
here.
fine.
I think it was an okay. It was an okay episode. I'm realizing it's hard to break them down, but it's just these are sort of sorted by just we both gave them high rankings at that point. Like there's only a couple that we both gave 4, so this knocks it up. Would you say that Regeneration is worse than the others, or would you push this ahead of something like Judgment at this point? I respect Regeneration for how they brought the Borg in and did it in a way that makes total sense. And I think that's kind of an accomplishment. That's the real reason I think it's in the top 10 position here.
Yeah, I would say so. I think I would choose Judgment just based on the moral dilemma that they play with. I think I find more interesting than how do we get the Borg into Enterprise.
I'd agree. I'm happy with leaving Regeneration there. Mm-hmm. And our number 5 is...
Also, before I forget, can someone who's watching / listening find out if what was the episode we just covered, season 3?
Anomaly.
If Anomaly is the first time a crew member dies, because we've kind of been going back and forth, and we don't know. It feels
what
like it is,
episode
but
was
I could
the
be
first
wrong.
episode where someone on the Enterprise dies? Does anyone
on the crew?
On the crew,
because in Regeneration, the guys from the campsite. Arctic, they die, or at least one of them dies, but I don't think any of the crew die, and I can't remember another case where someone on the ship dies. So,
would you consider, just kind of a nitpick here, would you say if a crew member is captured by the Borg and Borgified, are they dead? Is that crew member killed?
I mean, if they don't come back, I would say yes.
No, okay, that's fine. Last one, number 5 is Stigma. It's our only other. Both of us gave it 4s, so it sneaks in here. You didn't remember it. I remember it, but I don't find it memorable, really.
Yeah.
I remember it being the AIDS allegory, and that's about it. I only remember the concept and not anything that happens in the episode.
I have a memory of it being slightly off the mark in its analogy. I don't remember exactly in what sense, but I remember having a feeling like coming away thinking like it was not the one-to-one that it thought it was because of the way that T'Pol was being treated or something. I can't exactly remember what it is, but I'm sure someone who's just listened to that episode can tell me. But
Skippy
whatever
says someone dies in season 1, but he's wrong. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. But,
I was just going to say whatever I said, I'm sure it was brilliant. So,
is Phlox's wife the Stigma plot line? It is. Phlox's wife is in Stigma. Maybe that's more memorable than...
yeah. That's way more memorable than the Vulcan AIDS thing.
Yeah, this is Phlox. Maybe that's why that deserves to be number 5. Are you happy with those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? So we have, counting down, it's Stigma, Regeneration, Judgment, Dead Stop, and Cogenitor. I kind of like that. I think Dead Stop is better than Judgment.
Catwalk is the one where they all hang out in the catwalk, right?
Yeah.
Hence the title.
With Right Said Fred. Yeah, they hang out because they're going through a storm of some kind and they have to survive in there. No one knows the death that I've seen, so we'll just move on. So that's it for the best. Let's go to the worst. The 7th is the worst. I know I'm doing this backwards, but this is the way that the Excel works out. The 7th is the worst episode. We both said it was potentially a top 10 worst Star Trek episode. Neither of us can remember. I listened to the podcast. We didn't like, we thought the character motivations were all wrong. We thought that the flashbacks were terrible. We thought that it was another example of what Enterprise used to do a lot more than it currently does, which is that they make things a mystery because a character does not tell anyone what they know about what's going on, which is a huge part of that story. It has that weird scene where they chase Bruce Davison and he hides under the table and then peers out at them and then runs away. Mayweather goes down with them for no reason and has no lines. He's just in the background of a couple of scenes with Trip and Archer, or Archer and T'Pol. And then it has that goofy they set the floor on fire with acid or something, so she straps the seatbelts to her feet and runs across the parking lot to the shuttlecraft.
I'm
Do you remember?
sorry. Did I have a stroke just now? What?
The 7th is one of my top 10 worst episodes of Star Trek, and therefore it wins this competition about the worst
Could you
episode.
just reiterate what you just said? I do not remember that at all. She straps
she has to
seatbelts
run
to her
across
feet.
She has to run across the parking lot to get to the shuttle, and they have poured acid or something out there. So she straps some like fabric seatbelts to her feet and runs across the ice to get over to it. It's absurd.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds vaguely familiar. I mean, I think your description is more interesting what they actually did, but
And Norlimo says the ship was on acid or something, so they needed to protect their feet, and they lost their shoes.
if the ship was on acid, it would be a much more interesting show.
Yeah, that's what Enterprise is actually missing. So that's the worst. I'll keep moving down here. Keep this moving. Marauders, this is the second worst. We always reference Marauders as a terrible episode in all the other podcasts. I remember it because it's so derivative and terrible and boring.
That's what sticks out to me about this one, and I honestly think if Marauders is not rated lower than the 7th, it has to be that the 7th was just like a terrible episode, like just all points.
Yep.
Because the thing with Enterprise that makes it so difficult is most of the shows are put together fairly well. There's not a lot of drop off or quality issues as far as performances or the way the show looks or shot or even how the stories work. I mean,
Scripts are usually functional,
Yeah.
just boring. Yeah.
yeah, they're usually missing that extra oomph. The 7th, I have to assume, based on that, was just a failure on all levels. But Marauders, it was definitely just Enterprise on lazy autopilot.
Yeah. I have the 7th that low. Just we hated it on the podcast and we don't remember it. I just can't imagine a worse combination of a Star Trek episode where it's unmemorable and bad at the same time. Yeah, Marauders is pretty terrible too. Night in Sick Bay.
I don't remember what season this is, so I'll wait until we finish this before I bring it up. But A Night in Sick Bay. That is, they're running around.
It's Midsummer Night's Dream, as Jason has mentioned in the thing. It's that version of the Enterprise episode where they're running around. The dog is sick, and Archer's upset about the dog being sick.
Right.
It ends with that chainsaw ceremony where he's like chainsawing the tree.
Yeah. What a weird fucking show.
I don't have a problem with this episode. People always put this one as like a top worst Star Trek episode, but I thought it was just stupid and not functionally idiotic or anything like that. We'll keep moving. Communicator. Do you remember this episode? This is the one where Reed or someone leaves the communicator on the planet that is...
Oh, right.
Yeah, vaguely militaristic again.
Yeah.
It's another... Yeah.
No, that episode was terrible.
That's another terrible one.
That was one... If I remember correctly, that was one where we were like, it's it's a very contrived setup where what they did to get into the situation made no sense, and how they ended up fixing it made even less sense.
Yep. And it's just beige for the rest of it. Archer and Trip or whoever being tied to chairs and made to tell them where the aliens came from or something like that. The last one, Bounty. We just watched Bounty. It's the T'Pol gets horny for Phlox and Archer gets kidnapped and taken away for a bounty. I didn't think that one was that bad, but I think that's one of those examples of it's memorable because of the Phlox and T'Pol storyline is so strange that they chose to do that. It's not a good episode, but it is what it is. It's going to make it on number 5 of my worst.
Yeah, I think the problem with a lot of these bad ones is that they aren't explicitly terrible. Like I said, the production is usually pretty good, and the scripts are usually, like you said, functional. But they leave so much on the table that could have made it better or interesting, and they just don't go for it. And this one is just kind of it never gets past the initial idea of wouldn't it be funny if T'Pol went into heat and was stuck in a room with Phlox.
Yeah,
it's like, cool. What's the story? Well, that's it.
That's it.
Okay.
Enough.
Cool. Why do you need more than that?
The top 5 worst, from 5 to worst, is Bounty, the Communicator, A Night in Sick Bay, Marauders, and The Seventh. I think I'm fine with that.
So what I was going to say, because I didn't want to ruin it if it was one of these, what's the episode with the sexy slug? Is that from the first season where they go camping?
Oh, yes, that's
And Archer falls in love with the woman who turns out to be a slug person.
Rogue Planet. That's
Okay,
the first,
all
the
right,
first
okay,
season.
that's on the worst. Okay,
Yeah.
I couldn't remember where that landed, but I knew it wasn't one of the ones on the worst of list for this one. So
That's it. We'll do, I guess we'll do another, just a quick thing here. We are running a little bit longer than I thought, but power rankings quickly for the characters. We'll start at the worst. Who are the worst 2 characters on this show with the main cast?
Mayweather, and I only say Mayweather just for screen time's sake because they literally don't know what to do with him.
Hoshi?
Yeah, probably. I just generally don't really care for Reed.
Yeah.
Like I find the stuff they do with Hoshi more interesting than anything they've done with Reed.
Okay.
But yeah, I guess it would probably be Hoshi. Those 3 are probably at the bottom for me.
And no, Ockrest, Precious Cargo is not on the worst because that episode is memorable. It's the one with the lady from Top Chef,
right.
and it's goofy as hell and very silly. Yeah, I think it's Mayweather. It might be Hoshi for me at this point. I don't think they've done anything with Hoshi. I think Mayweather's had 1 or 2 episodes at least. Hoshi had that one where she went invisible, but I can't think of anything else outside of that. Those 2 are definitely the worst. After that, would you put Reed? I would put Hoshi, Mayweather, Reed would be the bottom 3. I think.
Yeah, I would agree.
That's like the Flotsam and Jetsam or whatever. They can just drift off to sea, and it's not a big deal for the show.
At this point, I'd put the head of the Makos above Reed and Hoshi and Mayweather.
And he's been different in each episode that we've seen.
Yeah.
After that, you've got, I guess you'd have Phlox, T'Pol, Trip, Archer.
Yeah. I think T'Pol is probably number 2, if not number 1.
You'd put her number 1. So
I think it's tough to put anybody, despite
who's the weakest of those 4.
Of those 4,
T'Pol, Archer, Trip. Who's the other one? Phlox. T'Pol, Archer, Trip, and Phlox.
I would say, again, if it's a screen time thing, I think they're not doing that much with Phlox, even though I do think he's the best character.
Yep.
I don't think he's getting a lot of screen time and a lot of interesting stuff with him. Yeah, it's tough. That's a tough it's hard to say any.
I'd put Archer
at the bottom or the top.
I'd put Archer at that 4th spot. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think he's the weakest of those characters, and he gets the most screen time. But I'm kind of just basing this on like what they've done with the character to this point, and I think it's Archer. Archer could be replaced, and I feel like it's less impactful to the show than the other 3 being replaced in some way.
Yeah,
it's a tough thing. It's a tough thing to jive out, but
I would say it's a coin flip. Replaceability with him and Trip. I don't really think Trip is that special.
We're in for a surprise here. Number 3 for me would be T'Pol. Number 3 would be T'Pol at that point. Number 2 would be Phlox. And number 1, I would have Trip.
Really?
Who's my favorite character of the show so far? Yeah.
Really?
I think he's a good combination of the character makes sense in the show, and the actor playing him is good at playing him. And I don't think they've fucked up Trip in any way.
Fair.
I think all the other characters, maybe except for Phlox, but Phlox doesn't have nearly as much screen time as Trip does. I think T'Pol is badly played sometimes, and I think Archer is badly done and written and played sometimes. So I just I'm a sucker for Southern accents, and when Florida gets lit up, it really devastates me.
Well, I mean, what you're saying is much like the show, the character who is just the most consistent ends up standing out.
Yeah, I mean that's true. If I was drafting a Star Trek All-Star squad, and they're like, you have to pick an Enterprise character to appear on your show, I think I'd go Trip. I think like as an engineer, I think he's a pretty solid engineer to have on the show too. You know. This show doesn't really focus on his engineering all that much, but he is the engineer. So
that would be. Have we ever done that? That would be kind of fun to do.
I'm waiting for more series to finish. Yeah, so that we could do a draft of the actual. Yeah, what do we like if we had to draft our own show with the characters who exist there and stock up a ship? Who would it be?
Yeah, that would be fun. You would probably be better. I would pick that the same way I pick Fantasy Anything, which is like that's a name I know.
He was good 7 years ago. I'm sure he's still great today.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
Who's your number one, B?
I feel like it's to Paul. Just because I think the stuff that they're giving her to do is they're kind of pushing her around a bit, and she's getting some interesting things to play with. Archer is tough to not put there just because they are also putting him through a lot of different situations, but the thing that kneecaps him is that he's not really doing anything interesting in them.
Yeah.
He's just sort of there, and they're playing it kind of down the middle.
I think the performance suffers for him too. That's a big knock for me. And we're a couple episodes into the third season at this point, so we have thoughts about it after this
have
goes
a lot
up.
of him tilting his head down and talking about things that lines he has to cross.
A lot of lines, a lot of morals have to be broken. I'll be putting up the early access to the Zindi in the Discord after this.
It's about
ends.
what he's willing to do.
All right, we're done wrapping up Enterprise. That's it. Thank you very much. Not a great season of Star Trek. Not a great season of the show, I don't think, in general.
Here's a question. Not saying, if you wanted to introduce someone to Enterprise, because, we were like, oh, well, Dear Doctor, Cogenitor, if you want to show someone an episode, that would be good. Would you, if someone was like, Star Trek, give me a poo-poo platter of Star Trek episodes, would you pick anything that we've seen so far from Enterprise?
No.
Yeah. Same.
Which is kind of impressive. It's the not picking a number in Kino thing. Like if you pick enough numbers and you don't get any of them right, you win because it's hard to not get a single number.
Yeah.
It's that I wouldn't pick any Enterprise episode, and I wonder if the audience would agree with that. I'm also very unfamiliar with Enterprise. As I've said, I have not seen this show all the way through before. I think I'd only seen a couple of the first season, but I don't think it's my lack of familiarity. I think it's just the lack of interest in what the show chooses to do with itself.
Yeah. And I've said it a bunch of times, so I won't go into depth about it, but it's like it had a lot of potential. It has a lot of potential to be a really interesting show given the setup of it. And, the first starship, doing all the stuff for the first time, the mistakes they make along the way, what they learn, all that kind of stuff. But they never really go out of their way. Like there's a few episodes that I think with a couple tweaks could be one of those episodes where it's like, if you want to get into Star Trek, you do have to see these two episodes of Enterprise because they are fundamental to the idea of the show kind of thing. And they really get to the heart of what the show's about. But
a couple of people just mentioning season 4 that they would do this for.
Sure.
Sure some season 4 episodes, but nothing that we've seen so far.
We'll see.
We will in 2 years when we get there.
2 fucking years.
All right, let's open it up to the audience here. If anyone has any questions or anything that we want to talk about, we'll see how it is. But season 3 is being recorded as we speak. The episodes are going to continue to come out on Thursdays until I settle down a little bit and we can get more, go back to the 2 a week. Although I do love the 1 a week schedule with this show because it uncrams our schedule to be able to actually do the Patreon and stuff like that in a reasonable time frame. What are we most looking forward to or hoping for going into season 3? This is a little bit spoiled because we know the 2 episodes, but if you want to go ahead, Clay, with this one.
I'm looking forward to the potential of pushing Archer into a more militaristic kind of element. Because he does have, a little spoiler for the episodes we have covered. I was saying I've always liked the potential of the Starfleet captain who is juxtaposed with someone who is not quite up to, doesn't have the same beliefs as Starfleet might might have. Like previously, I mentioned Reed being that character, which is not something they do, but which I wish they did. I still think there's room to do that. They haven't so far in the 2 that we've watched, but I still think there's room to play with that stuff. So I hope they get into that gray area and what the gray area means a little bit more. Just because it's interesting.
Yeah. For me, the big thing, and it's a little bit of what we saw in the first couple episodes, is that giving the show a purpose has completely energized the show in the first couple episodes. Not that the first couple episodes of season 3 are like 5s where we're like, what the fuck was that? That was unbelievable. But the show feels really different when there's a mission behind things, and it's not this. It makes you just go back on the second season and realize the ship was just kind of like aimlessly wandering around.
Yeah.
It's like,
what are they doing?
What are they doing out there? They're occasionally finding things that they find are interesting, but it's not like they don't have even a direction from Starfleet of like, go that way as far as possible and see what is out there. They're just meandering around looking at stuff, and it's like you don't appreciate it until you notice that it's not there. And then once they insert something that's going on in the show, you're like, oh, okay. Like there's actually stakes here and stuff like that.
Based on how quick they get back to Earth, it seems like they were just like hanging around the edge of the solar system and really didn't make it that far out at all. It's amazing though. It's amazing how that stuff really does help, though. I mean, surprise, having something to go
point
after. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Skippy says, Wes and Clay is unmemorable as Enterprise has been. Would you say it's more or less painful than Disco or Picard? I think it's less painful to watch, but
yeah,
it's very difficult to qualitatively compare them to each other. Enterprise does not annoy me in the way that those shows do, but it doesn't. I don't even think those shows thrill me, but it doesn't. Enterprise doesn't excite me either. But I don't know if those shows do that really either. So I don't know if anything about it is that. But I'm much happier watching the Enterprise episodes and talking about them than the Disco episodes, especially after the first 3 Disco episodes we do, where you kind of you're having fun making fun of the show, and then you're like, oh shit, there's like 8 more of these that are exactly the same as this. I don't want to talk about it anymore. That's the difference for me.
Yeah. I would say they're easier to watch because of all the things that we've talked about, where it's like, it's perfectly serviceable television. That's just, it's fine. There's not a lot that bad going on. There's not a lot great going on. They go down pretty easy, but I do find them they don't really stand out to me either. Whereas Discovery, for all its faults, is never not an engaging watch for me.
I remember Discovery, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For better or worse, really.
Yeah.
That's not a mark of quality. It's not like, the saying in wrestling is the worst. The worst response you can get is no response at all. So, just whether people are cheering you or booing you because they hate you and not like in a fun way, they seem to really not know the difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Enterprise hasn't really. It's easy to watch, but I actually, despite what it sounds like on the show, I actually kind of enjoy watching Discovery.
Yeah.
I enjoyed Discovery more than I enjoyed Picard. Picard was very frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
Discovery.
Why do you see the difference there? I find them identical, except that I know Picard, and therefore I like that show better, just based on that.
I think it's just because it's like you're hoping for more out of Picard, and the fact that it was just such a dud.
And we know them. We know the Borg. We know Picard. I guess there is a unmet expectations because you know them, and it's the 4th season of Arrested Development where I'm like, I wish this didn't exist because this kind of blights what I'm looking at. Yeah.
Whereas Discovery, like, I'm always interested in what crazy shit they're gonna do, because they're gonna do it, and you're gonna go, what are they doing? And I find it interesting to watch, and it's I get I've said before, the visuals of the show are fantastic, so it doesn't really bother me that much. It's a nice show to look at. But yeah, Picard was just so. The expectations and hopes were high, and what they delivered was Patrick Stewart doing a French accent in an eye patch in a nightclub. So
I don't want to miss Tim who super chatted here very generously. Thank you, Tim. Do you think they should have added a new admiral or a new captain for the mission into the Expanse? We talk about this a bit. We are both enamored with the Makos that are now a part of this. So we don't. I don't need a new admiral or a new captain. They added enough by adding these Mako soldiers who are with the crew.
Yeah, I think that's where the potential lies. Is you've got Starfleet. You've got a Starfleet captain who's trying to do Starfleet stuff for the first time, and then he's thrust into this situation where he's got the other person on his shoulder is a more militaristic group that's like, well, we could shoot him.
Very proto-Federation. Values that are before this sort of Garden of Eden Federation values thing took hold. A more modern militaristic approach of like, secure the area, don't do anything risky, don't leave anyone behind kind of a thing.
Yeah, and you've got the potential for what I was hoping season 3 of Discovery would be, which is there's no Federation. Show us why the Federation matters by stressing those ideals. That's what made Deep Space Nine so good. It's not that it was the least Starfleet-y or Federation-y of the shows. It's that they put those ideals to the test and pushed on them to see which of them bended, which of them broke, and which of them were rock solid.
Eric Sanchuan Network says, "Why do you guys hate Scott Bakula so much?" No, but seriously, is it the character or the actor? I like the actor, but he is limited as a utility player in what he can do. And as Archer, he's not very good. I think I've said before, he would be better as the chief engineer of the ship. I think he has that kind of an attitude and energy. He's nothing against. I think he's a fine actor if he's cast in the right role, but he is not a insert into any show and you've got a hits because Scott's coming to town. He's not that kind of an actor.
Yeah, looks great without a shirt on though.
He does, yeah. It's early 2000s, great physique.
Yeah, when there's still a little bit of that old style left where it's like, that guy looks like he's in shape instead of the, post-Fight Club Brad Pitt emaciated, dehydrated muscle look.
I said I've watched the 92 Royal Rumble recently on YouTube, and the comments are good, and it's just like, the comment is just like, Ric Flair looks like he's both in shape and out of shape at the same time. Yes. It's that kind of a thing.
Yeah. I think he's a fine actor. I just think he's miscast in this. I don't think he has what the role needs. And I think based on what I've seen so far in season 3, it's not helping.
Quick pop quiz for you, Clay.
Oh jeez.
Rank the captains we've seen. Kirk, Picard, Sisko, Archer.
Kirk,
we haven't
Picard,
seen another series, right?
Sisko, Archer. No,
I'm not going to bring Discovery. There's too many captains in Discovery, so we'll do those 4.
There's one every new season. Jeez.
Who's the bottom?
It's got to be Archer. Yep. Yeah. I would say Archer. I hate to say this, but I might put Picard next.
Yeah, I find it's believable.
Yeah, I think I might go Archer, Picard, Kirk, Sisko.
Oh, really?
Because I find Sisko the most interesting.
Yeah.
As a character, but I think my favorite is still Kirk. Specifically, I don't find Kirk that interesting until they get to the movies.
Yeah.
But I think movie Kirk is my favorite Starfleet captain.
Yeah, I think mine would be Archer, Picard, Sisko. Well, it depends on what you rate. I will say Archer, Picard, Sisko, Kirk would be the way that I would rate them, I think. The Picard and Sisko thing is how much you value performance over what the character is supposed to be. And I think Sisko's character is far more interesting than Picard is, but Stewart's performance is what defines Picard as the character. So
yeah, I would agree with that. Then Kelsey Grammer.
Can't you just do Voyager? I know you have a gold reach, but it's a Star Trek show and you're a Star Trek podcast. It just makes sense. It does make sense. We will be probably doing Voyager in some sense.
Fingers mean the money, David.
Whether it's
the money.
Whether it's the coverage that the series deserves is up to the patrons. If we get to that goal, we'll do the entire series. At least that's the idea at this point. But if not, it's just going to be a curated, quick blast through Voyager.
I don't know what it's going to take to get me to do all of Voyager, because it's like I enjoy doing this, but like it's kind of like training a new dog in my mind, where it's like you had a dog, having a dog is great. Then you get a new dog, and it's like, let's get a puppy. And it's like, oh, puppies, that's great. And then you're like, wait a minute. We've
Get
got
your newspaper.
We've got to train it how to pee. We've got so much wood furniture that it's going to chew the shit out of. It's like,
Got a schedule to get its balls cut.
yeah. I mean, I could just get a rescue and not have to deal with that element. I don't know exactly what the Star Trek equivalent of a rescue dog is.
Yeah, rescue would just be. I don't know what that is. You come in halfway into the animated series or something.
I mean,
like
I guess a curated run through Voyager would be the rescue dog equivalent.
We talk about baseball a lot. I would disagree. But who are our picks to win the World Series this year? Could not tell you.
Jesus Christ, I have no idea.
Could not tell you. Are the Sox good this year? I don't know.
I don't think I've watched baseball consistently since.
It's been a while.
Yeah,
I'm in the fantasy
long
league
time.
with Sean and Pat and everything like that, and I'm just like, it's the thing you mentioned before. I'm like, hey, I've heard of, is Roger Clemens still playing? Like, is he possible to draft at this point?
Yeah.
So it's like I don't know any of these young Cuban American 20-year-old pitchers who are, whatever. Let's see here. 2 weeks is nice. 2 a week is nice, but it's a luxury we can cope without. I am curious about people with the schedule. It's kind of irrelevant because I don't think it can change at this point. But you would agree, Clay? You like the 1 a week? It's obviously less work. But
yeah, I think at this point in time, it's the best way to go because both of our schedules, for various reasons, are pretty tight. Even as it is, we're kind of jumping through hoops a little bit to find a time to do this.
The flexibility it gives is that it does give us more time for stuff like this. Like there's more ancillary time to mix and match with stuff. I don't know if it's as rewarding for people, but it is possible to do.
I don't really know. I think it would be more stressful to do 2 a week plus something like this. Whereas if we're just doing
lot.
1 a week, we can, if we got to do one episode of Star Trek and then we got to watch a movie for the other thing. And I'm not complaining because I love doing it. It's just, it adds up eventually.
It does add up.
Because we've got like 15 shows between the two of us.
And with the Patreon stuff, it's just that when we only do one Star Trek a week, the Patreon is not a rush at the end of the month because we can just get it done during the week. And so it's like you can schedule them and it feels less. We have 3 days left in March and we have 2 movies to watch and then a Q&A or something like that.
Right.
It's a lot to jam in at the end.
Right.
Do you guys like the SFX on the show? Or the little stuff like the fact they have to press a button to get the door to open. I don't notice the button pressing. We talk on a very recent episode in season 3 about the FX and what we think of them. So I won't spoil anything other than say I miss the models. That's the point that I would say.
Yeah. Generally, I don't really have a problem with them. I think they're fine. I think they look better than they could have. I think I never watched Babylon 5, but the clips I've seen doesn't look like this. The special effects are great in that show.
Terrible.
So I think what they do is pretty solid overall. The one running thing I'll tell you now that's going to come up a lot in season 3 is I have some thoughts about the Zindi and how silly they look. The giant Bugman Zindi guy is not the best looking special effect I've ever seen.
You don't have to wait long. We talk about it at great lengths in the first episode coming out this week. So we do talk about the Zindi. Excuse me. Neurolimal says, I think, he's talking about Archer. He's severely miscast. Whenever he tries to do angry or stern, he comes off as petulant. He does, and we talk about that. I apologize that we say this a lot, but we are going to get into this in the next couple episodes. Season 2 is the worst season. It's just flounders for an entire season. How much are you guys dreading the remix? We talk about that as well. I can't spoil that.
I was not aware of that, and luckily or not, I couldn't find the remote to click it and skip it. And I'm glad I didn't.
Yeah. It's always nice to talk about it the first time a song comes up and then never talk about it again. So Ravenholm says, what would be the single most impactful positive change that you would make to Enterprise?
Full frontal nudity?
If they could do some kind of massage thing, that'd be good.
Tasteful.
I think it's really just a purpose to the show. Yeah. I think that good episodes will come from a purpose that the show has, and the show has an energy in season 3 that's different. And it's because it's what you were saying, Clay. the show is functional as it is. It's just limp in terms of like there's no energy to the stuff that they were doing in the early seasons. And I even accosted or accused Braga and Berman of not caring at a certain point in certain episodes. Like you get done, you're like, these people are just cashing a check, right? Like they don't care about this. They're just writing generic episodes that have nothing going on and are not interesting. It's the single most positive changes just to give a backbone to this crew to have them do something.
You know, I was thinking about that as we were talking about it. Why do you think that works? Why do you think that's necessary now? When is it because it's a serialized story? Like, because the original TOS is not, you know, they're just fucking around out there. It's not like they're doing anything specific. And TNG, the same thing. It's not like they have a mission they're on. Yep. Is it just the fact that they're trying to do a more serialized thing? But even like I wouldn't necessarily call the first 2 seasons of this horribly serialized. It's more or less episodic.
No, I just think that TOS was a product of its time and was the way it was. That's because that's the way the TV shows were back then. They had a ton of great sci-fi writers who wrote for the show and at least gave ideas to the show that they could take and do things with. TNG worked because it was a reboot of that, but they also realized that they can't just reboot the show. They have to do something different and make it more character-oriented than that. Like, you have to change it slightly. So TNG is similar to TOS, but it's a different perspective where the characters actually matter on that show.
Yep.
And DS9 is a success because it takes the idea and challenges it a little bit. And so it's not just retreading it. Enterprise and Voyager...
When it did retread it, it was terrible.
It was terrible.
Yeah.
Enterprise and Voyager are retreading. And we haven't gotten to Voyager, but Enterprise's first 2 seasons are just... We don't have an idea that makes this a different show. It's set in the future, or it's set in the prequel era. That's enough. That's not enough. Like, there's no core thematic identity to that idea. That's just the time that you're existing in. So the shows are very generic. And I think that that's really the difference, is that every successful Star Trek spinoff has to do something different, like conceptually, with what the other shows have done in order to have enough gas to give you a season's worth of material. That's
why I find it so surprising, because it feels like they did have that. Like the concept was right there.
Yeah.
You know, what should the show be but early Federation put into this situation? How does it react? That kind of thing. But
and not in a dismissive way, like on UPN. Like, you know how UPN kind of has a genre, or like a young adult kind of like thing? You can have that kind of, you know, that they wanted to do the crew members having relationships and sex and stuff like that. And that feels very UPN-y of the era, but it also, that would definitely be a different take on Star Trek.
Sure.
That's extremely different. I don't know if it would have made it better, but it would make it interesting to watch.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to me because I think there's a definite difference in stories between having the show be about something and having the show have something to do. And I think the first one is more important than the second one. And that's where Discovery falls off, because every season of Discovery is about them doing something and having something to do. Yep. But it's not really about anything. They can claim that it is, but it's really not. You know, it's just about them solving whatever the mystery is.
Right.
And that doesn't generate that interesting of a story setup. And I think the problem with the first 2 seasons Enterprise, is it doesn't have either one of those things.
Yeah.
Season 3 now has a thing to do. We'll see if what is the show about catches up to that.
Royo says, would you be willing to put on the TOS episode Omega Glory and the Star Trek Revisits on Patreon? It's an episode that richly deserves discussion. We can. Have you ever seen Omega Glory?
I don't recognize it by name, but
it's hard to describe without spoiling.
Is he related to Omega Red?
The tentacle guy or the whip guy?
The Russian,
no.
The Russian tentacle monster from the X-Men?
Yeah, Omega. Yeah, of course, the Red. It's hard to describe Omega Glory without spoiling it, because it's only memorable for one thing. But we can. I saw it on the list as a potential rewatch option, but I didn't put it on this month's Patreon. I can next month if that becomes another winner. Do you guys think we can start picking up the pace here for some of these questions? Where the hell am I? Where did it go? Where is the question?
I can see it.
I lost myself as to what time is it? 9:20. I'll go back a little bit. You can answer this question, Clay. Do you guys think the old model of 26 episodes per season is problematic, exhausting, especially for Enterprise?
No. I think it depends on what you're doing. I think it oddly enough, it feels when you're into an episodic show, I don't think you feel it as much because every episode is different. But once you get into like a serialized story, it's like that's a lot of time. That's why all the new shows are like 10 episodes.
Yep. Unless you're 24, when it's perfectly conceptualized to be exactly what you want it to be.
I'll tell you, 24 doesn't get enough credit for the fact that it did a moment to moment serialized show over 24 episodes.
Yep.
And they figured out the key to keeping it fresh was having 2 stories. So halfway through the season, they solved their first problem, but in solving that first problem, it reveals a second bigger problem, and then they go, brilliant.
Yeah. No, it's 24 is kind of a forgotten show in a lot of ways, but it was a big thing.
First season of 24, awesome, excellent show.
Who would you recast as Archer in an ideal world?
Like of the time or like now? I guess of the time, let's say.
Of the time, that's hard.
The first.
So what defines Archer?
The first 2 names that came to mind were Ray Romano and Andre Bauer, but I know that's only because they were both in the show Men of a Certain Age. With Scott Bakula.
Well, how would you define Archer? Archer is
green,
positive but naive.
Yeah.
And optimistic. Like Bakula should work for him, I think, is the funny thing. So I don't know if the writing is letting him down as much. I think what you really need from a Star Trek captain is he has to be able to deliver the big speech and make it feel like this guy's talking. I better listen to what the fuck this guy's saying. Whether it's Kirk going, walking around defiantly saying something, or Picard saying something elegantly, or Sisko just screaming and spitting on somebody as things are happening. Those are the things that you kind of look for. Bakula can't do that, and I don't know who of the era would do that, but that would be my one replacement trait. I would say if you can be speak with gravitas, that's an important Star Trek captain trait to have.
What about the guy from CSI? What the hell's his name?
The guy from Jade?
No, not David Caruso. Wasn't he in Star Trek? Was Caruso not in Star Trek?
Was he? Was he in one of the movies or something? Maybe?
I don't remember. Hold on a second. Let me look up
which
the hell
CSI
his name is. The original CSI. He was the guy from Manhunter. His name is. Come on, computer. Is anybody calling it out here? Nope, not Mark Harmon.
I'm way behind in comments, unfortunately, just because I'm looking
Gary
for the questions.
Sinise. His name is. The show has been on so long that the guy William Peterson. There we go.
He should. I don't think I'm familiar with the name. He should be Archer though.
Yeah, he's got kind of like he might be a little bit too serious, but he seems like a guy of that era that could pull off the gravitas element. Honestly. If it wasn't for the green element, I mean, a great Star Trek captain obviously would be Edward James Olmos. But
Battlestar.
Yeah.
Norman asks, what episode would you be willing to rewatch from the first 2 seasons of Enterprise, if any?
Would Ted Danson work?
He's an admiral to me.
Yeah.
He's a good guest admiral to show up.
Yeah.
I don't see Ted Danson getting angry seriously, I guess. I know he can.
Fair. Yeah.
But I don't think so. I'll think about it and come up with a better answer. I wouldn't rewatch any Enterprise. We're too soon. It's like asking me to have another kid at this point.
Yeah.
It's like,
that's another thing I was going to ask you is like, would you, are any of these episodes something you would like, if I'm going to throw on episode of Star Trek, let's dip back into Enterprise? I mean, I'm not going to.
No, if I put on like the random Star Trek channel and an Enterprise one I'd seen came up, I would probably hit the skip button to go to see what the next episode to pop up would be. Yeah, we're too close, and it's as we mentioned before. I don't think it's a very rewatchable show, which is surprising to me because our British listeners as Brandon Braga predicted in that oral history, British people love Enterprise for some reason.
Did he predict that? Is that
he
did
said
really
in the
say
book? He says, I don't know why, but Enterprise is huge in the UK. Everyone who comes over from the UK says they love Enterprise. Don't know what it is, and a lot of our most ardent Enterprise fans are UK listeners. It's just kind of a weird thing.
It's that Southern charm.
Skipping some, yeah. Maybe they don't get the accents. I'm introducing Star Trek to a friend by having her start with Enterprise, and she basically enjoys the show, but thinks Archer is a terrible captain.
That's an interesting choice.
I wouldn't start with Enterprise.
Why would you do that?
Just to go in timeline, I guess.
Yeah, I'm always curious whether or not that, like, people who do that with Star Wars, does that make the original stuff better? Like, when you get to the good stuff, does it make the good stuff better, or is it, or it's like, because I think you also run the risk of, like, if you start with the prequels and you really like the prequels and then you switch over to the original stuff, maybe that stuff doesn't fly as much. I don't know.
I would be concerned that starting off with the prequels, you'd be like, this is awful. And then when something good comes along, it's like, well, that was pretty good, but I still remember the prequels. Like, that's your first taste of a show.
When you get to A New Hope and Darth Vader shows up, you're like, this fucking guy.
Yeah.
This guy sucks. Like,
yeah.
The other one that's interesting is I had a friend. She did this by accident, actually, but she and her boyfriend were going to start watching the Marvel movies, and I think I may have mentioned this previously somewhere, but
they're watching it in chronological order, right?
By accident,
starting with Marvel.
Yeah.
Okay.
The first two she watched were Captain America and Captain Marvel, and I was like, no, because you got to do it. You got to do it in release order, otherwise it gets a little bit kind of weird. And
what list would you look at that you'd be like, those are the first? That's an interesting place to
they
start.
Have it that way on Disney.
They do.
They've got it broken up. I think they've got it broken up by phases, by release date, and also by chronological. So there's one of the things it has it listed: Captain America, Captain Marvel, whatever comes after that, I forget. Iron Man, I guess.
Voyager is a lot better than the mentions on this podcast would make it seem. I haven't seen Voyager in forever, and I'm fairly unfamiliar with it.
I tried watching. I know Murphy likes Voyager a lot more than most other people. He really likes Janeway.
Yep.
And I tried watching the pilot a few years ago, and I just couldn't get through it because it was too much. Old era Star Trek with old era CGI that it was not working for me.
Voyager has great episodes. Like Enterprise, we haven't come across a great episode yet. Voyager does have great episodes in it where you're like, that's a potential top 20 episode. Like that's a list maker. I actually
tried watching the finale not too long. Well, at this point, it's probably a couple years ago, which is called Endgame. Because I saw someone mention that the Voyager finale called Endgame is shockingly similar to Avengers Endgame as far as the plot. Because they're both about like having to go back in time and like undo something or whatever.
Yep.
I don't know if I finished it. I think I might have fallen asleep.
Yeah, get Voyager is the show that kills the Star Trek podcasts. I know it's fine, but it's a tough show to. It's a fine show to have in syndication every afternoon when you come home from school. To actively watch it is a different beast, I think. It's a better show than Enterprise pound for pound.
All right. Do we shoot to the top of the most respected podcasts if we make it all the way through and actually finish it?
Assume. I mean, we're only up there, so this is like watching the prequels first. We only have places. We only have down to be gone.
Is Voyager the K2 of Star Trek Mountains?
Worst thing about Voyager is that their interesting premise that they completely ignore. Aside from that, it's TNG quality one-offs. Which wrestler would you cast as a Starfleet captain? Any era is permitted.
Ooh, what wrestler would I cast as a Starfleet captain?
Stone Cold.
Stone Cold Steve Austin, the Starfleet captain. I don't know if that would jive so much. Starfleet captain.
Shane McMahon is an evil admiral or something like that.
Any of the McMahons would be good villains. I feel like my first call is like Bret Hart.
Mm-hmm.
He seems like he would be a Starfleet captain type. I'm trying to think of somebody else who's like exceptional on the mic.
I mean, if you Ted DiBiase looks like one if you put him in the uniform.
Yes.
I could see that.
I would put.
Are we considering just looks, or is it the way that they talk has to be the major thing? I'm assuming.
Yeah,
of this.
guess
That's why Stone Cold tickles me. It would just be a very hostile interaction.
Bret Hart's personality and character, I think, works better as a Starfleet captain, but I don't know if his voice really does. I would put Chris Jericho on the ship. I don't know if I'd make him the captain.
Yeah,
but I think he
security
would be
chief.
Yeah, something like that. I think he would be. He would be a great trip. Chris Jericho would be a really good trip.
There's some YouTube I watched. It was like a YouTube video of Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon watching an old match that they had together.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. This is not really anything to do with, but they look like they are 120 years old each. They are old looking in this. Razor Ramon looks particularly old.
My girlfriend from the other room just texted me to say Becky Lynch would be a great Starfleet captain, which I can't disagree with that.
Yeah, she can replace Janeway. We'll move on. Voyager is both good and bad.
Actually,
from Enterprise.
Charlotte Flair would probably be a pretty good Starfleet captain. She's got the gravitas, I think, to pull that off pretty well.
Let's see here. Just checking out these questions, trying to catch up.
My girlfriend also agrees with that.
We talked about the 26 episode season. 1 a week is fine. How small is the Enterprise ship? There's no turbo lift. It's true. Wait, what do they get on when they leave the bridge? That's a turbo lift, right?
I don't know.
I think they get on a turbo lift when they leave the bridge. Some pretty obvious bad green screen stuff is coming up.
Sweet.
Can't wait for Clay's comments on the Zindi, particularly the water ones. He doesn't like the bug ones. He's okay with the water.
I was just surprised by the water ones more than because it's like everybody's hanging out at the table and then they pan over and Abe Sapien's there as well.
I agree. The Loch Ness Monster. Are we running out west? Are you going to say full frontal nudity or do it in your Berman voice? Idle chatter. Are there plot lines introduced in the first or second seasons, Troy asks, that either of you that you either are pleased were dropped or annoyed to have seemingly dropped?
This feels like it's a leading question because I think we talk about it a bit, that the sudden dropping, or did we talk about it at the end of season 2? Basically,
about Future Guy?
The Future Guy.
Yeah, Future Guy is the season 2 thing. So we talked about that, and it's come out at this point. You seemed... you were surprised that that's the last appearance of Future Guy, which makes sense. That just didn't have anything. That didn't have enough gas for me to keep it going. So I'm not really disappointed that I annoyed.
Yeah.
Anything that dropped? A lot of it is just, I wish they would continue, but it was better. Like, I wish the Vulcan stuff was better. I wish the Andorian stuff was better. I wish the focus on founding the Federation was a little bit more clear. But it's there. It's just badly executed.
Yeah, I would agree. Do the Andorians come back?
They do.
They do? Okay. Well, yeah.
Season 4 focuses on this kind of stuff again.
It does? Okay. Yeah. I'd say the Andorians and the Andorian and Vulcan stuff is probably the most interesting plot line that they've sort of not really done anything with. The Time Cop stuff I think had potential, but whatever. I'm not sad that they dropped it as much as I am surprised to learn that they never bring it back at all. Like there's not even like a tie-up at the end of the show or something.
Yeah.
Like they don't even like pull back to reveal it was Archer the whole time, and he says, "And that's how I met your mother."
You probably addressed this, but don't you find the Zindi arc promises space opera, and does it excite you? What's the definition of space opera? I use it, and I don't think I understand what it means properly. It's just like let me Google it.
I've always thought it to mean that it's a science fiction story, but it's not really a hard sci-fi story.
Space opera is a subgenre that emphasizes warfare, melodramatic adventure, interplanetary battles, and romance.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a fantasy version of sci-fi.
Yeah, it's got spaceships and stuff, but it's not exactly like keyed into the specifics of sci-fi.
I don't like space opera, I don't think. That sounds
it's
Star
funny.
Warsy.
Yeah, I feel like we had this discussion when we started doing Star Wars, and that's how you came out. What side you came out on then?
Yeah, I that seems more fantasy to me, and I think I remember from that discussion. There's no reason that I should not just accept fantasy as equal in sci-fi when they're both made up things. But I respect sci-fi at least occasionally trying to be like trying to explain something. You know, like there's nothing against fantasy, but I have a very hard time, even more so with Star Wars, with like Lord of the Rings. I have a real hard time with those movies. Sure. I can't make it through elves and warriors talking to each other about rings and shit. It's hard.
Like I've never read it, but I always assumed Dune was more space opera than sci-fi.
Yeah. I would classify
like
that based on the movie and what I know from the board game and stuff. Yeah. Thank you, Matt Ross, for the Voyager Fund. Very kind. And Mercer, they kind of bring back Future Guy later. They mention him, I think. He doesn't have an appearance. He's not on screen at any point.
I hope they mention him in a quiet scene with Trip and Archer, where they're kind of eating lunch, and then Archer just goes, "Who the hell was that Future Guy?"
I imagine at the end of an episode before it just cuts to black, he's like, "Remember that Future Guy?" And then just wah, 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 wah. How much of the show would improve if they had color? I love Enterprise, but Brune and Clay is always depressing. We talk about this in the upcoming episodes where they add some buttons that have color to the Enterprise, and we both approve of that. Space opera is like if it was Star Wars, but all the lightsaber battles were ship battles and generals making hard choices. It sounds a little bit better, but still, you're not really. I mean, Battlestar is space opera at that point.
Yeah, I would still say Star Wars is space opera.
Mass Effect is both hard sci-fi and I can see it could be both. I don't mind space opera, I don't think, but I would prefer. I like my sci-fi to be more. Not that it can't be, but British. I prefer the philosophical approach to sci-fi. I like sci-fi being an allegory for something, and you can do that in war storylines. But if the war thing is the major thing, it just whatever. Are you going to finish off Star Wars, or is it more fun doing a tax return? I'm not going to fucking watch Solo again.
Yeah, we just got kneecapped by Solo. All three, we had it lined up to do it. And then Dave, unfortunately, had to postpone, and we just took the air out of the entire room.
Well, enough time had passed where we would have to rewatch it again.
Yeah.
It's not just like, oh, we'll do it tomorrow instead of today. It's I can't remember the movie, and now we'd have to rewatch it, and I remember hating it.
I feel like we could move on and do Rise of Skywalker and give some passing lip service to Solo, because I don't think it would have been an hour and a half of us all talking about how much we hated it. So
yeah. I haven't seen Rise of Skywalker yet, so maybe that is what we do.
It's a very silly movie.
Yeah. Dune is religious in tone. People nitpicking about Lord of the Rings. Don't care for that. I don't care about the Shire. Loves Lord of the Rings. Bridge gets blue carpet in season 4. Well, very
cool.
Not making fun of the comment, but I am. It is Enterprise to take the small things, I guess, when they come. Looking forward to the new Dune film. I'm too, I guess. I've been playing the board game with Dave and those guys, and I think it's clarifying the movie for me in some ways. Like the board game is a better explainer of what's going on in the movie than the movie is, or the books or whatever.
Yeah, I'm looking for. I think that new movie is probably going to be really good.
Who's the director? It's the Spanish guy, right?
Yeah, the guy who did Arrival and Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah, Arrival's fantastic. So.
Yeah, he makes great movies. I still can't believe that he made a Blade Runner movie that performed at the box office like a Blade Runner movie, which means it didn't make any money. And then they were like, let's give him an even more difficult property that nobody's going to show up to see. And they let him do Dune. I'm sure it's going to be great. I kind of think if I had been Warner Brothers, I know it makes everybody mad, the people who make these movies, but if I was Warner Brothers, I'd be like, let's just put this shit out on TV. Because if you put that out on TV, then you can complain about not getting the chance. But you wait and you put that out in theaters and nobody shows up. I don't know. And I've heard that the Dune movie is only half of the book. The intention is to make 2 of them. And if
is there only one Dune book? How many books are there?
There's like 25 of them.
Oh, okay.
But it's it's only half of the first Dune
book.
And if the intention is to put it out, hope that it does well, and then make the second one, I don't know, man. I hope I'm wrong, but I cannot see a mass market box office hit of fucking Dune.
It's too complicated. It's not. I don't even know how you get it. I assume you have to read the books to get into Dune. Do our friends who are in it, did they read the books? Did they just watch the movie and were like, yeah, the movie is all you need?
They all read the book, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That movie was so bad. And to answer the question, the board game is based on the book, I assume, because there's some kind of clarity to what's going on. Or at least I understand the factions and how they relate to each other. Arrival was so boring. Oh no. People are getting punchy out there this late hour.
Star Trek fans thought Arrival was boring? Come on, man.
I agree with Wes. Dune is very complicated. It is a very complicated plot. Any other questions here? I'm down at the bottom of the comments. I guess we can start wrapping up because it's been pretty long. Enterprise continues, coming out once a week. Patreon this month is what the fuck are we doing? We're doing the Ultimate Computer and Iron Man and Friday the 13th 3D.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that. That's going to be fun.
And I think that's pretty much it. Patreon.com/ThePensky Valve if you guys want to support the show. Thank you to all the super chats who showed up. Thanks everyone for coming out for this.
Thank you guys.
And you can look forward. We have a couple episodes in the can about the Enterprise episodes coming up. I'm changing the thumbnails on YouTube, so apologies if that upsets you, but I had to do something a little bit more interesting with Photoshop than what I was doing, so they're going to be different. So you can look for that on Thursday. Clay, you have anything you want to say?
No, we've got new Rotten Horror coming out next week with Cabin in the Woods, which I'm only now getting right after constantly saying Cabin Fever every time it comes up. We're not doing Cabin Fever, but Cabin in the Woods comes out next week, which is a fun one to do. And yeah, we'll have Friday the 13th Part 3. I've been playing the video game a lot, so I feel like I see
you on PlayStation.
Yeah, I've just been like living at Camp Crystal Lake for the past 3 months, and I have to say, honestly, the video game is making me have more affection for the movies than the movies themselves did.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because it's just you get all the different Jasons in one place, which is really what you're coming to see anyway, and you get to actually play inside the world, which is fun, and you're not reliant on bad writing.
I did like your point in the one of the podcasts. This is a tease for the Patreon thing. You had mentioned that when you are killed in Friday the 13th in video game, you get to sort of watch other players from the camera, like a third-person perspective. And it is, I hadn't never really thought about that, but it is a very, because that's always existed in like Call of Duty and stuff like that, but it's much more appropriate for a horror movie where you're like, don't fucking go in there, like just yelling at the screen. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's been really fun, because if you're playing like a fun game and you end up getting killed like fairly early, you can still watch and everybody's doing stuff, and the music is going and you're watching people sneaking around and stuff, and if they go the wrong way or they step in a trap or something, you're like, oh god damn it, he's right behind you, which is I never do that at the movies. Like I've never done that at a movie before, but to actually do that at the game, I assume it's because there's a person actively making decisions involved.
You as well. You're making decisions in that way. Yeah, I mean, it's I miss video games. I haven't been able to play video games as much, but I've just been thinking, like, in the future, movies and video games are going to connect with each other. Like, they're going to be indistinguishable from each other, I think. Movies will be an interactive experience, I think.
Yeah.
At a point far in the future, but when it comes to pass, it'll be some sort of virtual reality. You experience the story by being in it, and it feels authentic to you. I just feel that's the way. Just because of what you were talking about Friday the 13th, you feel more invested if you have even minimal impact into something that you're watching.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's interesting because they keep trying to bridge those two things together, and I don't think they totally realize how different the experiences are.
Yeah,
because I think that's why I think we've talked about this.
Too early. I mean, it's too early in the tech anyway. But yeah, I know what you mean.
The reason why video game movies never really work is because the entire thing about video games is it's an interactive experience, right?
That's why the stories in video games can be bad, because there's something else to do besides that. Yeah.
You're not going to the video game to have your socks blown off by quality writing or something, you know? And the movies are a very passive experience. So to take something that is inherently interactive and make it a passive experience, that's why it doesn't connect. Like why go see the Assassin's Creed movie when I can play the game at my house? Unless they do something new and different with it, which is usually the only time those work.
And then when they did Doom, and the last sequence was like in the POV of the first person shooter.
Yes, yeah.
That's pretty much all that they can do.
Yeah, it's weird because like I think there's still if they had a video game movie that had just like a killer story, I think it could work. But they generally don't, because they tend to be hamstrung by the stories from the video games.
Yeah. We should do the Final Fantasy one. It's like a Patreon, Spirits Within or whatever. I haven't seen that forever.
Final Fantasy VII is for free on PlayStation this month, and I've never played that before, so I just downloaded that. So I might give that a play.
I bought it 2 months ago, and I haven't played it, and then it comes out on this for free, and it's like, why bother?
It's frustrating.
This is the most annoying thing. But yeah, that would be
that movie. I would be curious to. I didn't see it at the time because even at the time it looked terrible. So I can only imagine what
it's
it was
that
like
Dead
now.
Eyes era of CGI where it's just like androids are staring back at you.
Isn't it weird that they've nailed the eyes, but now like it's the mouths and stuff that look
mouths
weird?
Are tough.
Yeah, it's weird. It's strange, but they've really nailed the eyes.
That's it, guys. We're done. I'll let you all go. Time for bed. Final Fantasy VI would be a good movie. And someone's on the Discord. I got too many notifications popping up. People trying to snag my attention. Thank you very much, guys. A whole bunch of Patreon stuff coming. Enterprise is coming. We're excited about Enterprise Season 3. We've got a couple episodes coming out for that. We've been interested in the episodes we've seen so far. Thanks for watching our coverage of Season 2. All this stuff. And we'll be back with more Rotten Horror. Badass will come back at some point and all that stuff. Patreon.com/ThePenskyFile. Thanks very much. See ya later. I'm going to click the button. Goodbye.